Welcome to our class on Chassidus. We're going to be learning a beautiful Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe. The name of the Chassidic discourse is called Shlach Lecha. The Rebbe said this Chassidic discourse from Shabbos Parsha Shlach. That year was the 26th day in the month of Sivan, which was also the Shabbos that you blessed, the month of Tmuz, in the year Tafshin Memches, 35 years ago. So again, the Chassidic discourse is based on the verse in this week's Torah portion where it says, Shlach lecha anoshim, go ahead and send people, which is referring to the spies to scout out the land of Israel. And then the Torah says, Vayishlach oisa Moshe, Moshe went ahead and sent the spies, and the Torah tells us, Kulam anoshim, they're all the people. So Rashi says, what does it mean, all the people? And Rashi says, at that time, they were kosher. When they went and they were sent by Moshe Rabbeinu, they were holy people. They were kosher people. They were going on a holy mission. So Rabbi asked a simple question. If we're going to say that they were holy when they went in, they were kosher, so why didn't they want to go into the land of Israel? They came back and they terrible report they don't want to go in. They're kosher people, the holy people. What does that mean? Whatever Hashem says you do. So what does it mean they don't want to go into the land of Israel? So in Likutei Torah, which is the Hasidic teachings from the Alter on the Parsha, in the beginning of the Torah portion, which we know that it's called, the Likutei Torah is called the Hasidic Torah portion, and the Alter explains that the Meraglim, the spies, they were on a very, very high level. And because they were on a very high level, they didn't want to go into the land. What does that mean practically? They didn't want to lower themselves to deal with physical mitzvot. Because in the land of Israel, what's the main service? Working the land, the materialistic mitzvahs, the physical mitzvahs. And they wanted to stay on a spiritual level. In other words, well, what does that mean they were on a high level? So to explain the high level of the Meraglim, the spies, so the Alter in Likutei Torah, he gives two explanations. One explanation is that the Meraglim, they were living in the world of Dibur, the world of speech. As a matter of fact, that's why they're actually called the Doir HaMidbar, the generation of the Midbar, because Midbar, desert, has the same letters as Dibur, speech. So in other words, they weren't living on the level of speech. Doir HaMidbar. However, the land of Israel, what world is that in? That's the world of action. And like literally, that the main work in the land of Israel was physical things. In other words, you have to work the land for 6 years, and you have to work the vineyard for 60 years, and therefore they don't want to get into the land of Israel, deal with it. Why? Because they have to spiritually downgrade from speech to action, which is a tremendous downgrade. Up to the point, it's not just a downgrade, it's exponentially a huge downgrade. Okay, and where do we see that? Like it's brought down in other places in Chassidus that if you look at the letter Hey is structured. There's a line on top. There's a line going up and down, which is connected to it. There's a gap, and then there's another small dot. So the three lines in the letter Hey, and as we know, the letter Hey Hashem used to create the world, is connected to, amongst many things, it's connected to the idea of machshava, thought, dibur, speech, and ma'isa, action. In other words, the upper line is referring to machshava, thought. The right line is speech, and the left one, the little one on the side, is action. Now, so you have thought, speech is connected, and then there's a gap, and then you have action. So the left leg is not connected fully to the Hey, which is again thought and speech. So you see that the world of action is totally disconnected, and you can't compare it to the idea of what in thought and speech. Now, so this is to recap. So the first level is that the spies were on the level of speech, and Israel's a level of action, and there's a gap between speech and action. They wanted to stay in the world of speech. That's one opinion of the level of the Meraglim and the land of Israel. Another insight, the way the Alter explains the Likutei Torah, another opinion, that the level of the spies wasn't just speech, but actually they were on the level of machshava, on thought, which is even higher than speech. And the land of Israel is on the level of speech, and they didn't want to come down to the land to the level of speech. And the Rebbe said you can add to it, so you can see how great the downgrade is, because they didn't want to go into the physical land of Israel. Because the physical land of Israel is literally action. And therefore, the Meraglim, that again, either according to the first opinion, they would level of speech and Israel's level of action, or the second opinion, they would level of thought, Israel's level of speech, and then the physical land is action. They don't want to come down to that level. Okay, so what do we see from here? That the spies, they didn't want to go into the land of Israel. Why? Because they don't want to lower themselves to deal with materialism, with physicality. Olam ha'maisa. It never goes on now a step further, and even deeper, with an introduction, which there is it's a wondrous idea which needs explanation. Why? In other words, what's the reason why the Alter Rebbe, it goes into the Torah at great length about the tremendous quality of the spies? They were in the level of thought, they were level of speech, etc. And he has the two levels, Bachshava and Dibur, etc. In other words, he should have said very simple. Why do you have to go into this level of thought and the level of speech? That's not relevant. What's relevant is that they didn't want to deal with physicality. Irrelevant what level they're at. What's the main focus? So the main focus is they don't want to deal with materialism. Who cares? Thought, speech. Bottom line is, the point is they don't want to deal with physicality. So Rebbe explains and he says, why is that? So why does nevertheless the Alter talk about the level of thought and speech? Because the Alter is trying to bring out that this they don't want to go into the land of Israel. It's not because they, God forbid, thought that there's no reason to go into the land. No, they were rebelling against going into the land of Israel, that we don't need the land of Israel. No. Yeah, you need the land of Israel, 100%. But what they were saying was, this has nothing to do with us, because we're on the level of thought, and we're on the level, or the other opinion, level of speech. So therefore, why are we getting involved in action? So the Rebbe is bringing out the reason why the Alter Rebbe goes into great length to talk about the levels of the Meraglim is to point out it's not God forbid they had anything against the land of Israel or they get anything against action. They just felt like they're on the level of thought and speech. Why get involved in materialism? Why get involved in the physical part? So based on this, Rebbe explains beautifully, and he says this: because Moshe didn't realize what he's dealing with. He's dealing with people that are on the level of thought and speech, and they don't want to be involved with physicality. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that sent him. Why? Because the one that has the power to elevate and transform physicality has to come from a higher level of thought. Thought and speech feels like, okay, I'm at a level of thought, speech, and it's my place to elevate materialism. Moshe Rabbeinu, which is even higher, and specifically because he's coming from higher than thought and higher than speech, he's able to go ahead and affect what the Torah says, v'yisurus eretz. The literal translation is to scan out the land. What is the spiritual translation of Yisuru? Yisuru comes from also the term of Yisroin, to create an elevation and an advantage in the land. And the way it's literally, because that's what happened when they went into the land of Israel, and especially the way it's explained in the Kabbalistic insights and Medrash, etc., that the Yisuru means that they created an elevation. What does that mean, an elevation? To go ahead and elevate and transform the materialistic world, the world of action. So in other words, what the Rebbe is saying is that that's why they sent Moshe Rabbeinu sent them, because Moshe Rabbeinu is from higher Machshava, and he sent them to, the goal was to go in and to elevate the materialistic world. Not only that, what did the spies say? They said, Lachmeinu heim. It's our bread. What does that mean? Yeshua and Kal said, Lachmeinu, it's our bread. In other words, what does that mean? That these sparks in the materialistic world, that is our bread. That's how we have a life sustenance. The materialistic world, that's what gives us sustenance. In other words, why is that? Because when you eat materialistic food, physical food, what does that do? It unites the soul with the body. Because if you don't eat, what happens? The soul leaves the body. So you need the physical food, even though it's physical, we're higher, we're human beings, so we have to come onto the physical food to keep the soul and the body united. In other words, the work in the physical world elevates the person himself. Because the person then becomes a mahalach. He's able to grow. He's able to advance in life. Up to the level of Yechul Mechayel Al-Choy. You can even go from one level to the next. So by getting involved in the world, you actually elevate. You create a unity in the soul and the body. And then you actually have a huge upgrade. And the Rebbe says this is also hinted by what it says afterwards, that Moshe Rabbeinu, later on in Parshas Chukas, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu sent the spies, and it says in the Torah, they sent Leragel to spy out as Yazer. the city of Yazer, and it says these spies, they actually conquered it. And Rashi says, because we're not going to do like the first spies. In other words, why we're not going to do like the first spies? Because we have trust in the prayers of Moshe Rabbeinu in to be successful in the war. In other words, which accomplished both points. In other words, one point is that they went ahead, the spies went ahead and they went into the land of Israel with the power of Moshe Rabbeinu, and they were able to accomplish the mission. So the point number one is they went with the power of Moshe Rabbeinu. They said that we're trusting in Moshe Rabbeinu. They went with the power of Moshe Rabbeinu. And not only that, what does it say? What is the city called? Yazer. Yazer means come from helping. And knows that the part of the world itself helps in their service. Yazer means it helped them. The world itself helped them. And it was just like it says in Yisroin, it actually elevates and adds to the person. In other words, so the point that I was bringing out is not only that the world needs us to elevate the world, but us human beings, we need the world because that's how we get elevated. So what they accomplished, the second set of spies, what it talks about in Parshas Chukas is, one is they went with the power of Moshe Rabbeinu, and B, they actually were successful in elevating the world, but more importantly, elevating themselves. Just 1 second, so we still have to understand, because the fact is, in the spies that we're talking about right now, the spies did not do their mission. They were sent with the power of Moshe Rabbeinu to go ahead and elevate the world and elevate themselves, and they didn't do it. But on the other hand, you must say that if Moshe Rabbeinu sent them as shluchim, as emissaries, Moshe Rabbeinu's mission was accomplished. Maybe they didn't merit to be the proper emissaries to accomplish it, but Moshe Rabbeinu's mission has to be accomplished. So on one hand, we're seeing they did not do their job. But on the other hand, how is Moshe Rabbeinu's mission being accomplished? Moshe Rabbeinu's mission has to be accomplished. And how do we know it has to be accomplished? Like we see that's understood it says in the Talmud that we know, how do you know that when someone sanctifies Hashem, so you can sanctify in private, but then you sanctify Hashem, what's called sanctifying Hashem? That's when you do it in public. What's called public? Public means there has to be at least 10 Jewish people. How do we know that sanctifying Hashem has to be among at least 10 Jewish people? Because we learn it out from this story of the spies. Because Moshe Rabbeinu said, until when will you have this Ada, this community, this terrible community, which is including the 10 spies, which obviously is not including Yeshua and Kallah, because they didn't have a bad report. So you see that where do you learn out that sanctifying Hashem's name is with 10 people? It's in this story. So obviously, Moshe Rabbeinu's mission of sanctifying Hashem's name must have been accomplished. But how was it accomplished? The Rebbe explains beautifully, and he says like this, that in reference to the part of the spies that had to go into the land of Israel, so Rebbe quotes Rashi, that Rashi says that Yoshua and Kalev, they took the place of all the other spies, and they elevated what they were supposed to elevate and what the other spies were supposed to elevate. In other words, so there's no question Moshe Rabbeinu's mission of elevating the earth by sending the spies was accomplished. Yes, unfortunately the 10 spies didn't do their job, but the mission was accomplished by who? By Yeshua and Kalev. Now, so that is only in the term in learning, in studying, it's called chefza. In the physical part of the earth got elevated through what the other spies. But the fact is, in reference to the spies themselves, the Gavra, the human being of the spies, seemingly was missing. They didn't accomplish the mission. But the Rebbe says something beautiful, and we know this is one of the gifts of Judaism. But the fact is, we know, the Rebbe says, there's nothing that stands in the place of tshuva. So even when the spies botched up, and even when anyone else botched up, so again, there's two parts. The mission gets accomplished through someone else. But when you botch up, but you didn't do your job, but there's nothing that stands in the way of tshuva. When someone decides they want to return to Hashem, and on the contrary, a Baal Tshuva, someone that messes up and does tshuva, Hashem loves that person much greater than before he sinned. So before you sin, you're great, you're okay, amazing, you didn't do anything wrong. When you sin, but then you do tshuva, Hashem loves you even better. So in other words, After the Meraglim went ahead and did tshuva, we know the spies, they did tshuva, they repented. So what happened was that they were elevating themselves. So as Rebbe is saying is like this, two important points. Number one is that Moshe Rabbeinu's mission was accomplished in the land of Israel, unfortunately not through the spies, but through Yeshua and Kalev. But the spies later on, when they did tshuva, they themselves were elevated. Rebbe says the Torah we know is everlasting. It's not the story of the past. It's past, present, and future all in one. Torah is everlasting. And it's brought down in many, many places, like in Tanya from the Alter Rebbe, and the Torah from the Alter Rebbe. Since Torah is everlasting, so obviously every part of Torah has a lesson, an everlasting lesson, for all the times and all the places. Now, since the spies, we said at that time when they were sent, they were kosher. They were holy people. Not only that, they were on a very high level, like we learned. They were in the level of Machshava, they were level of Dibur, they're very, very high level. So it's self-understood that also in reference to the Meraglim, there's a lesson that every one of us can learn. And it's a lesson which is an everlasting lesson. And obviously it's more important, when it's really strong is when you learn the Parsha Shlach. And especially when you're learning the Chassidic Torah portion of the Alter Rebbe and the Torah of Parsha Shlach. So what is the lesson? The Rebbe explains like this. In reference to both opinions that we mentioned before, it's not only that they're both correct. There's an expression, Elu be'elu divrei Elohim chayim. They're both correct on whatever level you're talking about. But also the point and the message of both insights, in other words, whether they were on the level of thought, on the level of speech, is true in every single one of us where we serve Hashem. In other words, we all have areas of our life that we want to stay in the world of thought. We want to stay in the world of speech. But the point is we have to leave sometimes the level of thought and level of speech and get involved in action. In other words, whether you're in the world in the world of thought or the world of speech, you got to get down to reality. In other words, because the fact is, every one of us, we have our thoughts, and we know that the machshava is our thoughts, so we know there's four worlds, Atzilus, Bria, Tzia, Asiya. So the thoughts are connected to which world? The world of Bria. And like it says in the blessings in the morning, Ata Barasa, the world of Bria, Ata Yitzarta, which is the world of Yitzira, the Ata Nafachtabi, which comes down to reality. So in other words, Ata Barasa, you have created, is referring to the part of Bria of our soul, which is basically the world of thought. Ati Yitzarta is the part of Yitzira of our soul, which is the world of speech. But the ultimate intent is that the thought and the speech should not stay in the world of thought and speech, but they should come down in the world of action. Ata Nafachtabi, we have to come down into reality. Up to the point of Ata Mashamar V'Kibri. In other words, this is basically the essence of our work every single day, that we go out to work. We go out to work. Every single day. What does that mean practically on a spiritual level? The soul comes down into the body, and through the fact that the soul comes in the body, because we know that the neshama is on a very high level, whether it's machshava, dibur, bria, tzira, etc. So when it comes down into this world, it has the power to elevate the world, transform the world, up to the point that after you elevate the world, the world goes back and elevates the soul as well. Now, Rebbe finished off and he says like this: when we do our spiritual work to bring down our thought, our speech, Bria, Yetzira, into the world, into the physical world, in other words, the idea is to conquer the world, even the part which is outside the land of Israel. And like the famous line from the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, what did he say? Mach, I'll say it in Yiddish, I'll translate it, Mach da, which means make over here Eretz Yisrael, make over here the land of Israel, which means by bringing your thoughts and speech down to reality. So when we do that, what we accomplish is we bring close the ultimate and the ultimate future redemption, that we're going to conquer the land of Israel in a literal way, and we're going to go literally, physically in the land of Israel. Not only that, the Rebbe says, it's going to be in a way like it says in the Torah, the Chayum and Anosh, they lived from the people, which means they took a part in the land of Israel, that this generation creates an elevation and an upgrade, even in the part of the earth that generations before didn't have the redemption. And by doing that, we will create the complete redemption in the whole world. And how much more so we're going to create the completion of the Jewish people. Up to we're going to create the revelation of the Yechidah. The highest level of our souls are going to come out. And it's going to come out in a way where it's going to come down in the lowest level, the way the soul comes into the body. And Rebbe finishes off and says, and he hopes that this should all happen, b'karev mamash, very, very quickly. The souls will be coming back into the body, every single Jewish person from all the generations, and how much more so the souls in the body of this generation, because through that we create an elevation in all the souls in the bodies of the previous generation. And more importantly, and most important, the Rebbe says, we should do our avodah of getting involved in the world. We should do it with simcha, with happiness, with tuv love and gladness of heart, up until the point that we have the revelation of the simcha. Like it says in the prophets, Rani Yakara Lo Yolda, you should be rejoiced because the barren woman that didn't give birth is going to give birth. We're going to have the birth and the revelation of Mashiach coming, and Hashem is not going to hold us back, even like literally like the blink of an eye, like Rashi says in Chumash, in reference when God took the Jewish people out of Egypt, right in the middle they took them out. And what does Rashi say? The minute the time came, boom, it happened right away. And the takeoff of Miyad, Mama, should happen very, very quickly and right away. So here you have another beautiful, powerful Chassidic discourse of the Rebbe. The Rebbe explains the whole idea of the Meraglim on a spiritual level, wanting to stay in the world of thought and speech. We have to come down to reality to transform the world. This way we transform the world, we transformed ourselves, and ultimately we'll transform the world. We're going to have Mashiach is going to get revealed, and next class will be in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. Have a great and blessed week. Shavua Tov.